Almost 3.5 years ago, a month after the inauguration of our current president, on a Sunday morning, I checked my voicemail before the 8 o'clock service. The greeting on my voicemail says to leave a message for the pastor, Su Ying Wong. The message that I heard on my voicemail began with an audible gasp of disgust. Then the woman continued, "I can't believe they have someone like you as a pastor. You and all your kind are what's messing up this country. You should go back to where you came from. I will never be coming to your church." Well, happy to report that she did not come to the church. Of course, this is not the first time this has happened to me. Actually, it is the haphazard nature of these occurrences of racial hate that throws me off balance, makes me jittery about when it will be happening again. It's hard for me to feel safe, accepted, and welcomed. Welcoming is the theme of the reading from the Gospel of Matthew today. But it isn't just any sort of welcoming. It is welcoming prophets and people who speak the truth that is commended to the readership, and it will have its own reward. The context is that Jesus has sent out the 12 to preach the nearness of the reign of heaven, to cast out demons and heal the sick. But Jesus warns them that their coming will always be welcomed. They will face rejection and persecution. And yet, for those who do receive them, they will get a reward. Jesus says, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." Embedded in these words of Jesus is a Semitic proverb. Whoever welcomes a prophet receives a prophet's reward. Whoever welcomes a righteous person receives a righteous person's reward. What does this proverb mean? What does it mean to receive the reward of a prophet and the reward of a righteous person? What is the reward? The proverb likely means that you do well to welcome the words and teachings of a prophet or righteous person because those words and teachings are good for life, and they are the reward. Maybe it can be as simply as listen to your teachers and do what they say, and you will benefit from this. But Jesus changes the proverb with an addition. He says, "Whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." Some of us might immediately think of little ones as children, but that's probably not whom Matthew is talking about. He's probably referring instead to the rejected, maybe particularly the very disciples he's sending out. He can also be referring to the most rejected, called the least of these, elsewhere in Matthew. These least of these is a superlative way of saying the little ones. They are the most rejected. These are the outcasts and sinners that are rejected by society. He is saying that if you welcome the rejected, you will get to understand what Jesus is about and what the reign of heaven is about. Who are the little ones today? Who are the rejected? Can we imagine a reward for welcoming the stories of those who stand at the edge of society? Can we bear what we would hear about what life is out there? What life is like on the margins? Can we bear to understand that the hardships in one place can be made by the privileges of another place? It is not in our training to hear these things without feelings of shame, guilt, and defensiveness. These feelings are very uncomfortable. We'd rather not hear about them because they give us these feelings. And so some of us choose not to hear these stories. Instead, we return to the world we knew and liked, safe in the old stories about who we are and who they are. Life is tidier and more comfortable. But Jesus says there's no reward in this. Native American author and poet, scientist Robin Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, talks about how restoration of right relationship must be about restoration. In order to have restoration, we must have restoration. Narratives matter. For human beings, stories create what we believe is real. In fact, narratives have such power that there is something called a meta-narrative. This is a very large story. It's a story that we are caught in, and it becomes a filter through which we see the world. We think sometimes the meta-narrative is what is real. But one of the ways you can tell that a meta-narrative isn't truly reality is that it was once not a story. For example, one such meta-narrative is the story of racial superiority based on white supremacy. This story actually has a beginning, and it began at the end of the 15th century with the beginning of colonialization from Europe and the slave trade from Africa. It was the beginning of a story that rationalized the slave trade based on social Darwinism and a hierarchy of race according to phenotypes, like skin color, how long the brow was, whether it was high or low, hair color, whether hair was straight or curly. This meta-narrative was not a construction that was done linearly, but with different ways of getting at how to construct supremacy based on whiteness. And if you ever take a look at some old charts from the Victorian era, you will find trees where the races are mapped out on the tree on a taxonomy of superiority based on these phenotypes. And you might even encounter an index of negrescence where whiteness is at the center in London, and in concentric circles radiating out from London is a growing darkness. And this was called the index of negrescence. All these pieces came in the service of a narrative of white supremacy. It became meta when it became part of the air we breathe, when it became implicit, when we good and liberal people say something biased and are shocked or shamed by what just came out of our mouths. Our relationships can be distorted by bad stories. Our relationships can be restored by a restoration. But the writers have to change. The voices heard have to be the little ones. The old authors now need to listen. The meta-narrative breaks down when we begin to listen to stories face to face and let them change our minds. The Christian word for this kind of thing is called repentance. In Greek, metanoia, which literally means to put on a new mind. Each time our country has an eruption of crisis, we are also given a story to re-story. This is an opportunity, and if we take it, it will have its own reward. If we welcome the prophet who tells it like it is, if we welcome the righteous person's truth, if we offer a cup of cold water, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee to a person society rejects and listen to their report from the margins, then we will perceive the reign of heaven better. This is the reward. We at St. Thomas are engaging in this kind of work. We are working with PAC to begin to listen to the stories of those who are in the greatest need and in the greatest pain. I hope you will join Cal Cornwell and the PACT group to do more of this kind of close engagement of listening. When we listen, we don't try to fix their situation. What we try to do is let them know they have friends and to empower them to speak up, to be a part of a movement, to organize for the things that they need and to address their greatest pain. And of course, it's our pain and our need as well. What we see is that we are connected, truly. Adult Ed is going to be doing some race and racism study based on the Episcopal curriculum called Sacred Ground, put out by the National Church. So please be looking for that as we begin to consider what other stories are there. And as we listen, we will break down the meta-narrative and begin to re-story our lives together. It is long, hard work, but it's deep spiritual work, and it has its reward. When I first got that message on my phone that Sunday, almost 4 years ago, I walked into the service being a little off kilter, and I told Gage McKinney about what happened. I was feeling very tired, and I wondered aloud in his presence if I could ever really talk about this stuff with the church. And Gage said to me, "You're the one to talk about it. You have the authority of experience. They will listen to you." I remember feeling unsure that that was true. It is hard enough to have something like this happen. It is worse to be dismissed or disbelieved. It is also vulnerable for me as I am hurt by these kinds of things. And yet I do believe I am sent, and I do believe I am called to speak my stories and to listen to other stories. And I do believe too that those who have welcomed me, well, I call them my brother, my sister, and my friend. We have each received our reward. Amen.